The grand hall of the Galactic Council gleamed under the soft light of 10,000 crystal spheres, suspended in a perfect grid above the assembled dignitaries. The hall itself was massive, capable of hosting over 50 different species, each with their own preferred climate zones and atmospheric conditions. In the center of it all stood the Council's central dais, an elevated stage from which decisions of galactic significance were passed down. On this day, the mood was tense, but not entirely hostile. Not yet. Humans were new to the Council, barely 20 years into their tenure as members. In the eyes of most, they were seen as one of the lesser races. Their homeworld had only recently advanced to interstellar travel, and though they had shown diplomatic skill, they were peaceful to a fault. Other species had histories of conquest, warfare, and the violent expansion of their empires. But humanity? The humans had negotiated their way into the Council without so much as a raised fist. Seated in a semicircle around the central dais were the most influential members of the Council, leaders of empires that spanned hundreds of star systems. Foremost among them was Grand Arbiter Viral, a towering member of the feline-like Zenithar, his black fur shimmering under the crystal light. His golden eyes glowed with the simmering arrogance his species was known for, and his voice had the low rumble of a predator. The matter of human involvement in the Drexion conflict must be settled today, Viral declared, his voice carrying throughout the hall. His gaze flickered toward the human delegation. We, the Council, have been monitoring this situation for some time now, and it is clear to us that humans are unsuited for military intervention. Seated near the back of the hall was Colonel Mara Ortiz, a decorated officer of the United Earth Command. Her uniform was stark against the vivid array of alien fashions around her, but her expression was unreadable. Flanking her were two other humans, Ambassador Andrew Cole, a skilled diplomat, and Major Ethan Greaves, her second in command. And at Mara's side, sitting quietly and unnoticed by the aliens, was a German shepherd, her faithful companion Rex. Viral's eyes narrowed as he continued. Humans lack the capacity for true violence. Your species is far too peaceful. It is not in your nature to engage in sustained warfare, especially on the scale that is required against the Drexion Armada. Their strength is unmatched, their tactics ruthless. We fear that human forces would be a liability. The room filled with a quiet murmur of agreement from the other council members. The Drexion envoy, a six-armed reptilian creature with scales as hard as iron, leaned forward, clicking its teeth together in a sound that signaled amusement. Humans are a diplomatic species. Let them negotiate with the Drexions. They may be able to talk them into submission. Several of the other council members chuckled, though Mara remained stone-faced. Ethan's jaw tightened beside her, and his hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his sidearm. Rex, sensing the rising tension in his master, let out a low growl that was barely audible to human ears. Ambassador Cole cleared his throat. The United Earth Command did not come here to request your permission for involvement. The Drexion Armada has threatened human colonies, and we have a duty to protect our people. We are not asking for assistance, we are merely informing the Council of our intent to defend ourselves. Viral's lip curled in disdain. And how do you plan to defend yourselves, human? With words? With trade agreements and negotiations? The Drexions do not care for diplomacy. They will slaughter your people, and we, the Council, will not risk a greater galactic conflict by involving ourselves in your inevitable defeat. Mara finally stood, her boots clinking against the polished floor. Every eye in the hall turned toward her as she stepped forward, her posture straight and unyielding. She met Viral's gaze without flinching, her voice steady. We're not asking you to risk anything, but don't mistake our patience for weakness. We may prefer peace, but we know how to fight. And when we do, we fight to win. A ripple of laughter ran through the council. The Drexion envoy clicked its teeth again, louder this time. This is entertaining, truly. Humans, fight? You've never faced an enemy like the Drexions. They'll be upon your colonies in a matter of weeks. Your species would do well to evacuate and leave the war to those who are capable. Ethan shot a sharp glance at Mara, but she gave him a small shake of her head. Let them talk, her eyes seemed to say. They don't know what we're capable of. Viral leaned back in his seat, his tail twitching with amusement. Colonel Ortiz, we have observed humanity for many years now. You are a fascinating species. but your time among the stars has been marked by peace, diplomacy, and cooperation. You have no history of conquest or war on the galactic scale. We fear your kind would not survive the wrath of the Drexion Armada. Mara took another step forward, her gaze unwavering. You think we've forgotten how to fight because we prefer diplomacy? Let me remind you, Arbiter, that Earth has seen its fair share of war. You just haven't been paying attention. Her words hung in the air for a moment, the weight of them slowly sinking in. The council chamber fell silent, the laughter and murmurs fading into an uncomfortable quiet. Rex, sensing the shift in tone, stood up, his ears perking, eyes alert. Ambassador Cole leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. Humanity has always sought peace, but when war comes to our doorstep, we fight, and we don't lose. Varal's amusement faded slightly, but he remained skeptical. We shall see, Ambassador, we shall see. The Drexion Armada arrived on the edge of human space faster than expected. The first reports came in from the outer colonies' massive warships, bristling with weapons, tearing through the frontier defenses like they were made of paper. The Drexians were not interested in negotiation. They did not send diplomats or messengers, they sent fleets. Mara stood on the bridge of the UES, resolute, a newly commissioned battlecruiser, one of Earth's most advanced warships. Beside her, Major Greaves watched the tactical display with a grim expression. The Drexion fleet was moving in fast, their ships numbering in the hundreds. Earth had never faced a threat like this before, and the rest of the Galactic Council had remained silent. They weren't going to intervene. Status, Mara asked, her voice steady. They're almost in range, Colonel replied, Lieutenant Ramos, the ship's tactical officer. Our defenses are holding, but it's not going to be enough. They have the numbers. Mara nodded. We've trained for this. Remember, they think we're weak. Let's show them how wrong they are. She tapped the console on her armrest, opening a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Colonel Ortiz. The Drexians think we're an easy target that will fold under pressure. Let's show them what Earth is made of. We're not running, we're fighting. Across the fleet, human ships prepared for battle. The Resolute powered up its primary cannons, and the smaller frigates and destroyers moved into formation. Every soldier on board was tense but ready. This was the moment they had been training for. Ethan stood beside Mara, his hand resting on his sidearm as always. You think we've got a chance, he asked quietly. Mara glanced at him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here. Rex stood at her side, his eyes fixed on the view outside the viewport. The dog had been with her through countless missions, his loyalty unwavering. He was more than just a companion, he was a soldier in his own right. And today, they would need every advantage they could get. The Drexion ships came into view, their sleek black hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. They moved with terrifying precision, like predators closing in on their prey. But this time, their prey was ready. Fire, Mara ordered. The first volley of human fire streaked across space, slamming into the Drexion ships. Explosions rippled across their formation, but the Drexians kept coming, their return fire brutal and unrelenting. The battle had begun. For hours, the two fleets clashed, the void between them filled with the fury of war. Human ships weaved between Drexion warships, using hit-and-run tactics to exploit gaps in their defenses. The Drexians were powerful, but they fought with arrogance, expecting an easy victory. Mara watched the battle unfold, her mind racing through tactics. They're overextending, she muttered. They think they've already won. Ethan looked at her, frowning. So what do we do? She grinned, the fire of battle in her eyes. We lure them in. Let them think they're driving us back. Then we hit them where it hurts. She relayed the orders, and the human fleet began to shift, giving ground but staying just out of reach. The Drexians took the bait, pushing harder, their ships breaking formation in their eagerness to finish the fight. But Mara had studied them, had anticipated their arrogance. When the Drexion fleet was fully committed, Mara gave the signal. The human ships wheeled around with deadly precision, converging on the Drexion flagship. the Resolute led the charge, its main cannons blasting apart Drexion escorts as it barreled toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The Drexions, caught off guard, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. Human ships poured fire into the Drexion flagship, crippling its engines and tearing through its hull. The once invincible warship was now a burning wreck, drifting helplessly in space. On the bridge of the Resolute, Mara watched the flagship's destruction with grim satisfaction. "They underestimated us," she said quietly, "and they paid the price." But the battle wasn't over yet. While the destruction of the Drexion flagship was a major blow, the rest of the fleet still outnumbered the human forces. The Drexions, furious at their loss, regrouped and launched a vicious counterattack. Their remaining ships swarmed the human fleet, firing relentlessly, determined to avenge their fallen commander. "Shields are failing," Ramos shouted over the din of alarms. "We can't take much more of this." Mara gritted her teeth. They had dealt a major blow to the Drexions, but now they were on the defensive. She knew they couldn't hold out forever, not against these odds. Suddenly, a new signal appeared on the tactical display. At first, it was just a blip, then more and more contacts began to fill the screen. "Colonel, we've got incoming ships," shouted one of the bridge officers. They're not Drexion." Mara's eyes widened as the realization hit her. The Galactic Council had finally sent reinforcements. The tide of battle shifted as the ships of the Galactic Council's elite fleet jumped into the fray. Sleek, advanced warships from the Zenithar, Drexion, and other Council species formed a wall of firepower, cutting through the Drexion forces with devastating efficiency. Their arrival was unexpected, but not unwelcome. The Drexions, caught between the human fleet and the Council reinforcements, faltered. Their once coordinated assault fell into disarray as their ships were systematically destroyed. The battle was turning, and fast. On the bridge of the Resolute, Mara watched in disbelief as the Council fleet tore into the Drexions. She hadn't expected their help, especially after the way the Council had dismissed humanity's capability to fight. Yet here they were, saving the day. "Looks like they finally decided we were worth saving," Ethan muttered beside her. Mara's expression remained neutral, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. "Better late than never," she said. The Drexion fleet, battered and broken, began to retreat. Their warships limped away from the battlefield, leaving behind wreckage and flames. It was a clear victory, but the cost had been high. Dozens of human ships were destroyed, thousands of lives lost. But Earth had held its ground, and the Drexions had been driven back. As the last of the Drexion ships disappeared into the void, the Galactic Council fleet moved into formation around the human ships. A transmission came through, and Mara opened the channel. Grand Arbiter Viral appeared on the screen, his expression unreadable. "Colonel Ortiz," he began, his tone measured. "It seems we were mistaken." Mara raised an eyebrow. "About?" Viral's golden eyes flickered. "About your people. You fought well, better than we anticipated. Perhaps. We underestimated the humans." Mara crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "Perhaps you did." Viral inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect. "You have earned the Council's respect today, Colonel. We will discuss the terms of future cooperation in the coming days." Mara gave a curt nod. "We'll be ready." As the transmission ended, Ethan let out a low whistle. "Didn't think I'd live to see the day the Council admitted they were wrong." Mara allowed herself a small smile. "They'll get used to it. We're not done surprising them yet." Rex, sensing the tension easing, let out a soft bark and nudged her leg with his nose. Mara reached down, scratching behind his ears. "Good boy, Rex. We did it." The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Drexions would return, and next time they wouldn't be so easily fooled. But for now, humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage. They were no longer seen as the peaceful, diplomatic newcomers. They were fighters, survivors, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. Mara stared out at the wreckage of the battlefield, her mind already racing ahead to the challenges that lay ahead. The Council may have come to their aid this time, but she knew better than to rely on their goodwill. Earth would need to be ready for whatever came next. But one thing was certain: when the time came, humanity would fight, and they would win. A week later, back in the Galactic Council's Grand Hall, Mara and her team stood before the same assembly that had once mocked them. The atmosphere was different now, the laughter replaced with a quiet respect. Even Viral, ever the predator, looked at them with a new appreciation. "Humans are resilient," he said at last, his voice carrying a note of grudging admiration. "You have shown us that your species is capable of more than we believed." Mara inclined her head, keeping her expression neutral. "We're not here for recognition. We're here to protect our people." Viral's gaze lingered on her for a moment before he turned to the rest of the council. "Very well. The council will reconsider its position on human military capabilities." The humans were no longer underestimated. The galaxy had seen them fight, and they would never forget it.